Faith is rarely tested in the calm. Instead, it proves its endurance in the dark, against the wind. Sitting on the Mount of Olives days before his execution, Jesus described the exact nature of this test to his disciples. He looked past the immediate fate of Jerusalem and warned them of centuries of coming darkness and severe persecution. 30 years later, the Roman state fulfilled that warning. Beginning under Nero in 64 AD, the empire weaponized its vast resources to systematically exterminate the Christian population. Believers were stripped of their property and hunted. Vast numbers retreated beneath the hills of Rome, tunneling through earth and rock to build hidden galleries where they could worship and bury their dead. This sustained physical violence acted as a harsh filter. Anyone seeking social advantage or casual affiliation abandoned the movement, leaving behind a resilient and deeply unified group. The empire relied on public executions to serve as a definitive deterrent. The arena floor was designed to turn the destruction of religious dissidents into popular entertainment, complete with wild beasts and fire. But the intended victims refused to play their part. Instead of begging for their lives or renouncing their beliefs, men and women faced execution with unshakable peace, and often with songs of triumph. Their endurance produced an effect Rome could not calculate. Observing this phenomenon in the 2nd century, the African apologist Tertullian noted a severe anomaly. The blood of Christians is seed. For every believer struck down, multiple citizens in the crowd, confronted by undeniable conviction, stepped forward to take their place. The numbers multiplied steadily outward into every corner of the Mediterranean. The strategy of overt physical annihilation had completely backfired. To defeat this movement, the adversary required a different set of tactics. By the 4th century, the fires of state-sponsored persecution ceased. The empire abruptly stopped fighting the church. In place of the sword, believers were suddenly offered political acceptance, temporal prosperity, and social honor. Lured by these new advantages, masses of citizens began joining the church. They adopted the Christian name and professed belief in the resurrection, but retained their old habits, showing no conviction of sin and feeling no need for repentance. To accommodate this influx, the church absorbed local traditions. The physical objects of pagan worship were kept in place. Statues of ancient deities were simply renamed as Jesus, Mary, and the saints, and venerated exactly as before. Comfort accomplished what the violence of the sword could not. The absolute purity of the early faith was dissolving from the inside. Christianity transformed into a wealthy, merged institution, its original doctrines layered with superstition, and its halls decorated with the gold of imperial patronage. The majority of Christians accepted this integration. They reasoned that lowering their doctrinal standards was a practical concession to maintain social harmony and increase their cultural influence. A small faction watched this syncretism with deep anguish. They recognized that the foundational truths of the scriptures were being traded for political leverage. Forced to choose, this minority took the only step left. They severed all ties with the official institution to practice their faith free from idolatry and falsehood. They understood that peace purchased by sacrificing principle is an illusion. True fidelity to God required a permanent separation. This historical fracture exposes a persistent mechanical truth. A system built on unyielding moral clarity cannot peacefully coexist with a culture built on convenience. While the gospel advocates peace, its absolute purity inevitably highlights and condemns human selfishness. That exposure naturally triggers a defensive, often hostile reaction. This maps the dynamic. When an uncompromising standard is placed inside the shifting desires of society, it creates unavoidable points of friction. When the standard bends to match the surrounding culture, it removes the conflict entirely. The resistance disappears, but the standard is lost. Therefore, a total absence of opposition is not necessarily a spiritual victory. It is often the clearest symptom of conformity. This leaves a difficult question for the present day. If pure faith guarantees opposition, why does persecution seem to slumber? The historical pattern suggests an uncomfortable answer. Modern religion awakens no anger because it largely mirrors the culture around it. Doctrines that early believers endured the arena to protect are now treated with widespread indifference, easily modified to avoid social friction. If the uncompromising power and fidelity of the early centuries were fully revived, the quiet would end, and the fires of opposition would return. Purity is only proven in resistance. The question is whether we possess a faith that the world finds necessary to oppose.